The laughter that night still echoes in my head. That's the fat S we have to put up with. Those were my daughter's exact words shouted across the grand ballroom of her wedding in Charlotte, North Carolina. 200 guests turned to look at me, their champagne flutes trembling with cruel amusement. My cheeks burned and I clutched the small gift I had wrapped so carefully, praying for the floor to open beneath me. But then something strange happened, something that would change my life forever. As the laughter rolled through the glittering hall, a man at the front table froze mid-chuckle. Mr. Sterling, the groom's father, tall and distinguished in his bespoke suit, stared at me as if he'd seen a ghost. His face drained of color. "Wait," he murmured, stepping closer. "Aren't you my new boss? My name is Eleanor Baines, though most people call me Ellie. I'm 66 years old, and for most of my life, I've been invisible, the kind of woman people pass every day without seeing. After my husband died in an accident, I raised my daughter Jasmine alone. To survive, I cleaned corporate offices before sunrise, my hands raw from bleach, my shoes worn to the sole. Jasmine grew up ashamed of me, ashamed of my job, my clothes, my rough hands that smelled of cleaning solution. She wanted a glamorous life, not a mother who pushed a mop. What she never knew was that while I scrubbed those marble floors, I was listening. I overheard executives discuss business mergers, stock tips, and secrets they thought were safe after hours. Slowly, I began to learn. I bought secondhand books on finance, read, discarded newspapers, and started investing small sums, $50, then $100, then more. It took decades of quiet discipline, but my money grew. My humble apartment hid a secret empire. I purchased properties, acquired shares in collapsing companies, and eventually built a network of shell corporations. The world knew me as E.J. Beaumont, a silent investor whose wealth was whispered about in boardrooms, but whose face was never seen. And now, in that glittering ballroom filled with people who mocked me, Mr. Sterling recognized me, the mysterious buyer who had acquired his failing company 2 weeks earlier for $45 million. The laughter faded as he turned to me, eyes wide with awe. "My God," he whispered, "you're the one who bought Sterling Corporation." Jasmine's painted smile vanished. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. "This is my mother. She cleans buildings." But Mr. Sterling was already pulling out his phone, scrolling frantically through emails and transaction records. His voice trembled. "Miss Beaumont, I want to thank you for saving hundreds of jobs." The entire ballroom fell silent. Jasmine's friends, who had mocked me minutes earlier, now stared as if the world had flipped upside down. I said nothing. I had learned the power of silence long ago, but my daughter's eyes, once full of superiority, now flickered with confusion, fear, and greed. The next morning, Jasmine began calling me. At first, she pretended concern. "Mom, are you okay? You looked tense at the wedding." Then came the probing questions. "Did you know Mr. Sterling before? Why did he call you that name?" And finally, the desperation. "Please tell me the truth. Are you Beaumont?" I didn't answer. I still woke at 5:00 a.m., drank my bitter coffee, and took the same 3 buses to my cleaning job. What she didn't know was that while I wiped fingerprints from glass doors, I was also directing a $200 million investment portfolio from my corporate phone. A few days later, Jasmine appeared at my door, her ivory coat gleaming under the flickering hallway light. She sat stiffly on my thrift store sofa, her perfume overpowering the smell of old furniture. "Mr. Sterling keeps asking about you," she said. "He says you look exactly like the woman who bought his company." I poured her tea, keeping my voice calm. "Do you really believe that your mother, who cleans offices and wears secondhand clothes, could be a millionaire?" She stared at my rough hands. "I don't know what to believe anymore." I smiled faintly. "Then maybe you should stop looking for answers that money can buy." But I knew my daughter too well. That seed of doubt would keep her awake at night, gnawing at her, until she either broke down or found a way to turn curiosity into opportunity. What I didn't expect was how far she would go to uncover my secret, and how that search would reveal who we both truly were. Jasmine's visits became frequent after that night. She would appear without calling, pretending to check on me, though I could see her eyes darting across every inch of my apartment hunting for clues. Once I caught her peeking into my desk drawer. "I was just looking for a pen," she said, forcing a nervous laugh. But I knew better. She was convinced I was hiding something, and she wasn't entirely wrong. For years, I had kept my true identity buried under layers of modesty and caution. My important documents were locked away in a safety deposit box. All Jasmine could find here were grocery receipts, old newspapers, and worn furniture. Still, I left a few false hints: a bank slip showing a $300 deposit that looked suspiciously altered, a scribbled number that seemed like a corporate contact but actually belonged to a pizza place. I wanted her to wonder, to question, to stew in her own imagination. The truth was, I needed to see who my daughter really was when faced with temptation. Would she care about me, or only about the wealth she believed I possessed? One Friday evening, Jasmine returned with her husband, Devin. It was his first time in my apartment, and his discomfort was plain. He looked around as if afraid to touch anything. "Mrs. Baines," he said politely, "my father has been acting strange since the wedding. He keeps saying you look familiar, like someone from his business world." Jasmine's eyes gleamed. "Yes, Mom. He said you're that Beaumont woman, the one who bought his company." I stayed calm. "Baines is a common name," I said. "If Mr. Sterling wants to thank his buyer, I'm sure he knows how to reach her lawyers." Jasmine's voice trembled. "He said she saved hundreds of jobs, that she paid more than the company was worth. He was practically worshipping you." "Then he must have mistaken me for someone else," I replied softly. "Men like him often see what they want to see." That night, I saw something new in Jasmine's eyes, not just greed, but panic. It was as if she were beginning to understand that her perfect world of wealth and status was far more fragile than she had imagined. Within a week, she returned pale and trembling. "Mom, we're in trouble," she whispered. "Devin's family company is collapsing. We owe hundreds of thousands, credit cards, mortgage loans. We could lose everything." I folded my hands in my lap and let her words hang in the air. "Mr. Sterling's company was drowning before the sale," she continued. "The debt keeps growing. Devin's trying to find a new job, but— Mom, please. If you know someone, if you have any connections." Her eyes filled with tears. "Please help us." I studied her face, the same daughter who once called me a disgrace in front of 200 people. "Tell me something, Jasmine," I said quietly. "If I really were a millionaire, would you be here because you love me, or because you need my money?" She flinched, her lips trembling. "That's not fair." "No," I said. "What's unfair is pretending I was worthless until you discovered I might not be." For a moment, silence stretched between us, broken only by the hum of the old refrigerator. Then Jasmine whispered, "You're right. I've been a terrible daughter, but please, if there's any way you can help us, I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." Her voice shook, but her eyes were calculating. I saw the same hunger there, the desperate spark of a gambler who's down to her last chip. I sighed and reached for an old shoebox I had hidden on the shelf. "There's something I've never shown you," I said, setting it on the table. Inside were a few faded photographs and old payslips. I once worked for a company called Beaumont International. I cleaned their offices for years. Jasmine's eyes widened as she stared at a photo of me outside a towering glass building. "You worked for Beaumont?" "I did," I said. "And one night something happened. I overheard things, private conversations, irregularities. The CEO asked me to stay late for a private meeting. After that, I had to leave." Her breath caught. "He paid you off, didn't he?" "I signed an agreement never to discuss what happened," I said vaguely. "Let's just say there are powerful people who prefer my silence." Jasmine was trembling. "So you do know something about Beaumont? Maybe that's why Mr. Sterling recognized you." I said nothing. Silence again was my weapon. Finally, she blurted, "If you have money from that time, any money, we need it now. Please." I looked her in the eyes. Perhaps I could make some calls, but it would involve people who value secrecy above all else. I'd need to know exactly how much you require. 600,000, she said immediately, her voice sharp with greed. That would clear everything. I nodded slowly. Then I'll see what I can do. Her relief was almost euphoric, as if she had just glimpsed salvation. But she didn't realize this was never about money. It was a test. And the real price she would have to pay hadn't even begun yet. The next 3 days were a study in desperation. Jasmine called every few hours, her tone swinging wildly between gratitude and anxiety. Mom, did you make the calls? Do you think they'll help us? Please don't forget how much this means to us. Her messages filled my phone until I silenced it completely. I wanted her to feel the weight of waiting, the kind of uncertainty I'd lived with for decades. By Friday night, I was ready to begin the final stage of my plan. I called her. Bring Devin tomorrow evening, I said. Come at 7:00 p.m. and don't tell anyone else. What we discuss must remain between us. When they arrived the next night, Jasmine wore a fitted black dress, her hair perfectly styled, as if she were attending a business negotiation rather than visiting her mother. Devin looked pale and tense, the kind of man pulled into something he didn't quite understand. I served them tea in my chipped cups and sat across the table, my posture calm, deliberate. Before we start, I said, you both must understand that what we're about to discuss can never leave this room. The people I work with are powerful. They protect their privacy at all costs. If you break that trust, it could ruin all of us. Devin swallowed. Mrs. Baines, Jasmine told me you might know influential people who could help us get a loan. But if this could endanger you, we don't want that. His sincerity softened me, but Jasmine's eyes betrayed a different emotion, expectation. Mom, she said eagerly, if you can help us, we'll do whatever you ask. Anything. I stood, drew the curtains closed for dramatic effect, and lowered my voice. For years, I worked cleaning the offices of one of the most powerful corporations in the country. But I wasn't just a cleaner. I paused, watching Jasmine's breath quicken. I was an observer. I reported what I saw and heard directly to Beaumont herself. Devin frowned in confusion, but Jasmine went pale. You mean you worked for E.J. Beaumont? The real Beaumont. For more than 15 years, I said evenly. Officially, I was a cleaner. In reality, I was her eyes and ears, her private informant in a world of corruption and greed. Devin blinked. So, you were like a corporate investigator. In a sense, I replied. And when I retired, she compensated me generously for my discretion, enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Jasmine gasped. How much? Enough to erase your debts several times over, I said calmly. But the question is not how much I have, it's what you're willing to do to earn it. Devin leaned forward, uneasy. We're not asking for charity, Mrs. Baines. We'll pay interest, sign a contract, whatever's fair. We just need a chance. Jasmine ignored him completely. What do you want in exchange? She asked, her tone trembling between fear and greed. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a folder. I've drafted a proposal, I said. If you agree to these terms, I'll transfer $800,000 to your account within a week. Jasmine grabbed the folder, flipping through the pages. Her eyes darted rapidly, lips moving as she read. First condition, she murmured, complete transfer of all current assets as collateral. She looked up. That means we'd have to put the house and cars in your name. Temporarily, I said, until you prove you can manage money responsibly. Devin frowned. That's extreme. It would leave us entirely dependent on you. Second condition. Jasmine continued, immediate relocation to a city of your choice with limited family contact for 5 years. Devin's face drained of color. Limited family contact. What does that even mean? It means I said you'll live in a house I provide in a city I choose. You'll receive a modest monthly stipend, $4,000, to rebuild your life, free from temptation and old habits. After 5 years, we'll revisit the arrangement. Third condition, Jasmine read aloud, her voice barely steady. Voluntary renunciation of all future inheritance rights. Devin stood abruptly. Mrs. Baines, this isn't help, it's exile. You're asking us to trade our family for money. But Jasmine didn't move. She stared at the papers, her fingers trembling. $4,000 a month, she whispered. That's manageable. And 5 years isn't forever. Devin turned to her, his voice rising. You can't be serious. You'd sell your relationship with your own mother for a check. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand. This is my punishment. My way to make things right. Right, he snapped. By turning your mother into a banker and yourself into her debtor, this isn't redemption, Jasmine. It's vengeance. His words struck harder than he knew. I felt the sting of truth in them, the echo of something I hadn't wanted to admit even to myself. Was this truly justice, or was it a test born of bitterness? I looked between them, Devin trembling with integrity and Jasmine shaking with greed and guilt, and I realized I had reached the crossroads. It was time to end the illusion. There's one more condition, I said quietly. But it isn't written in the document. Before you sign anything, you need to hear the truth about who I really am. Jasmine's breath caught. What truth? I rose from my chair, went to my desk, and took out another folder, this one real. The truth, I said, placing it before them, is that I don't need contacts or favors to give you this money, because I am E.J. Beaumont. The silence that followed was so complete it hurt my ears. Devin blinked, speechless. Jasmine's lips parted, but no sound came out. I own Sterling Corporation, I continued softly. I own the restaurant chains, the textile factories, the companies that have kept families like yours afloat. I built an empire worth more than $200 million while you were ashamed to be my daughter. Jasmine finally whispered, That's impossible. I slid the documents across the table, bank statements, contracts, my own signature. Read them. She did. And the moment her eyes widened in horror, I knew she believed me. Jasmine's fingers trembled as she read the documents spread across my small kitchen table. Devin leaned over her shoulder, eyes scanning the pages in disbelief. Corporate contracts, acquisition papers, signatures in bold black ink, and a photograph of me in a boardroom beside men in tailored suits. This can't be real, Jasmine whispered. You're the mysterious woman who bought Sterling Corporation. Yes, I said calmly, and several others like it. For 30 years I have lived two lives, Eleanor Baines, the invisible cleaner, and E.J. Beaumont, the businesswoman who rebuilt companies people thought were dead. Jasmine sank back into the sofa, her voice shaking. All those years you came home exhausted. I thought you were just surviving. I was building, I said. Brick by brick, deal by deal. I learned from the men who never noticed me mopping their floors. I listened, studied, and acted while everyone thought I was beneath them. Devin rubbed his forehead. You built a $200 million empire while cleaning offices. Exactly, I said. And I hid it because I didn't want power to attract parasites or pity. I wanted peace. Jasmine looked at me as though she were seeing a stranger. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me mock you all those years? Because I said softly, the moment people know you have money, they stop seeing you. They see what they can take. Her face twisted with shame. I called you a fat S in front of 200 people, she whispered. And all that time you were... Your mother? I interrupted, my voice low but steady. Nothing more, nothing less. Devin sat heavily on the arm of the chair. Mrs. Baines, Miss Beaumont, whatever name you prefer. He said gently, I can't imagine what it's cost you to live like this. But I hope you know your secret. It changes everything. It does, I said, and yet it changes nothing at all. Jasmine began to cry, covering her face with her hands. I deserve to lose everything, she sobbed. You should cut me out of your life completely. I already did, I said. After the wedding, I rewrote my will. Every cent will go to charity scholarships, shelters, and hospitals. I decided that no one who laughed at me would profit from my silence. She looked up, stricken. Then I'll never see a penny. No, I said. But perhaps you'll find something better than money, dignity. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was Jasmine's quiet sobbing. Devin finally reached for her hand. She's right. he murmured. We don't deserve her help. We'll fix this ourselves. Jasmine shook her head. We can't. Yes, we can, he said firmly. We'll sell the house. I'll take any job I can find. You'll do the same. We'll start over. Jasmine turned to me, her mascara streaked. Please, Mom. If I can't have your money, at least let me have a chance to earn your forgiveness. Her voice broke something inside me. I had spent years hiding behind walls of pride, protecting myself from her cruelty. But behind those tears, I saw my daughter again, the little girl who used to wait for me by the window when I came home from work. Forgiveness, I said softly, isn't given in a single moment. It's built through actions. If you truly want it, start with honesty. Admit what you did at that wedding in front of everyone who laughed. She wiped her eyes. You want me to apologize publicly? Yes, because shame can destroy, but it can also rebuild. You wanted the world to see me humiliated. Now let them see you human. Jasmine nodded slowly. I'll do it, she whispered. And to my surprise, she did. A week later, she organized a dinner for Devon's entire family, the same people who had laughed at my expense. Standing in that elegant restaurant, Jasmine faced them all and spoke with trembling hands. 6 months ago, I called my mother a name no daughter should ever say. I mocked her, laughed at her, and made her feel small. What none of you knew is that my mother is one of the most successful businesswomen in the country, but that's not what makes my actions unforgivable. What makes them unforgivable is that she's my mother, and I treated her like a burden. The room fell silent. Mr. Sterling, who had once joined in the laughter, stood and apologized as well. For the first time, I saw something in Jasmine I hadn't seen in years: humility. After that night, everything began to change. Jasmine and Devon sold their house, their luxury cars, their jewelry. They moved into a modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood and started from scratch. Jasmine took a receptionist job at a medical clinic. Devon became an accountant at a small firm. When I offered to pay their debts, Devon shook his head. We'll do it ourselves, he said. We need to learn. Jasmine began visiting me weekly. At first, she was nervous, careful with her words. Then one day she said, Mom, I don't want your money. I want to know how you did it. Teach me how to build something of my own. And so I did. Week by week, lesson by lesson, I taught her what I had learned in silence: how to invest wisely, how to stay patient, how to listen more than you speak. Slowly, she began to change. 4 months later, she came to lunch beaming. Devon and I paid every bill this month without using credit cards, she said proudly. It's the first time in our lives. Then she hesitated, her eyes bright with emotion. We have something else to tell you. We're having a baby. I froze. A baby. Yes, Jasmine smiled through tears. And I want her to grow up knowing her grandmother, both of them. The one who worked herself to the bone, and the one who built an empire. Something in my heart finally eased. Then maybe, I said, taking her hand, we both get to start over. 6 months later, I stood before a mirror in my new apartment, a bright, open penthouse overlooking the city skyline. For the first time in decades, I allowed myself to live as who I truly was. My hair was neatly styled, my clothes tailored my reflection, dignified but soft. I was no longer hiding behind the worn shoes of Eleanor Baines or the guarded power of E.J. Beaumont. I was finally both. Jasmine's transformation was just as profound. She no longer wore arrogance like armor. Her voice had changed, her eyes softer, her gestures more thoughtful. Every Sunday, she came to my home with Devon for dinner, bringing homemade dishes and new stories from her modest job at the clinic. It's not glamorous, she would say, smiling, but it feels good to earn something honestly. One afternoon, she arrived carrying a leather folder. Mom, she said shyly, I've been thinking about what you told me about building something that lasts. She opened the folder to reveal a business proposal. I want to start a small program that teaches financial literacy to women who've been through hard times. Something to honor you. I felt my throat tighten. That's beautiful, Jasmine. I want to call it the Baines Foundation, she said. to remind me of the woman who cleaned offices and built an empire. Her words brought tears I hadn't expected. Then you'll need a partner, I said, reaching into my own purse and pulling out a document I'd been preparing. I've already started something similar, the Baines Sterling Family Foundation. I'd like you and Devon to help run it. Devon's eyes widened. Are you sure? Yes, I said. It's not an inheritance. It's a mission. Half of my fortune will go into it, dedicated to education, community programs, and small business grants. You won't be rich from it, but you'll be responsible for something that matters. Jasmine's hands trembled as she touched the document. Purpose without privilege, she whispered. That's what you want to pass down. That's what I want to live for, I corrected gently. Months passed and the foundation flourished. Jasmine proved to have a gift for connecting with people, something I never had in the boardroom. Devon handled the finances, building the kind of transparent structure that made donors trust us. Together, we funded schools, women's shelters, and community gardens across the state. When my granddaughter Aaliyah was born, I held her in my arms and felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. Her tiny hand wrapped around my finger, and in that moment, I knew my life's circle was complete. I looked at Jasmine, exhausted but radiant in her hospital bed. You'll do better than I did, I told her softly. You'll teach her everything I had to learn the hard way. She smiled weakly. No secrets, Mom. Not ever again. And I knew she meant it. Now when I look back on that humiliating night at her wedding, the laughter, the whispers, the sting of that cruel word, I see something different. It wasn't the end of my dignity. It was the beginning of my freedom. That moment forced me to stop hiding, to finally confront both who I was and who my daughter had become. People often ask if I regret living in disguise all those years. My answer is always the same. Hiding gave me power, but revealing myself gave me peace. And in the end, peace is the rarest wealth of all. If you've listened this far, thank you for sharing this journey with me. Tell me, have you ever hidden a part of yourself out of fear or pride? What would happen if you finally let the world see who you really are? If my story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you listening from, and what truth have you found in your own life? With love and gratitude, until the next story.